Hi peeps. So I've had I've had a viewer request that I kind of revisit some older decks from years and years ago and talk about ways in which I'm still working with those energies in my life, or if I'm not working with those decks and that energy in my life still. So, and I was really inspired by this. So thank you to the viewer who asked me to create some videos on this. And I did a smaller series maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, kind of revisiting some of the more popular Oracle decks that I'm a little more well known for reviewing and for doing some series and workshops on. So I wanted to go with some much lesser known or maybe less popular decks for this video series that's starting now. And I thought it would be really nice because of the time of year it is. As here in New England, we're stepping into the energy of September tomorrow, or I'm sorry, in 2 days, excuse me, not tomorrow. And with that comes the energy of autumn and fall and getting into all those wonderfully delicious things that I love about this time of year. So I thought Ludy Lescot would be a really wonderful deck to kind of start this series off with. If this deck is still available for purchase, I will put the link on Amazon below in the description box. I don't get money for sharing those links with you guys. It's just so many viewers end up asking me, where can I purchase this, that it ends up being easier to just share that link right off the bat. So if it's still available for purchase, I will share that below, and I will also share some of the older videos of me working with this deck. So it's kind of, Ludy Lescot Tarot is really, has kind of this New Orleans, Louisiana voodoo, witchcraft magic feel to her. And I would say probably around, I'm going to show you some images from the deck while I talk, probably around the time my son was born, so he's about 8 now. I really started to connect with this deck, if I remember right. If it's a different time frame, it'll be in the video that I link below that will let you know that time frame on that. But I, at the time, was really entranced by the artwork and this beautiful like New Orleans feel. In my late teens and early 20s, I lived in Ocean Springs in Biloxi, Mississippi, which is the deep south. And I really felt like this deck kind of encapsulated that dark Anne Rice vampiric feel that you definitely pick up on when you spend any amount of time in the deep south. And I really felt like this deck encapsulated that energy. It was definitely a dark shadow deck, gritty feeling, and exploring specific myths or fairy tales for sure in the imagery, which also lines up with traditional Rider-Waite-Smith imagery as well. So really very much I feel like a well-executed deck. Now it is a Scarabeo deck, and so you do get that kind of throwaway little white book that comes along with the deck itself. So I didn't really spend a lot of time with that little white book. It was much more about connecting with the deck for readings for myself and for clients, and specifically this time of year and whenever I'm kind of feeling that pull or call for shadow work. This is one of those decks that, especially when I first purchased it, I really used her a lot for that. And I had a lot of love for this deck. You all will remember, those of you who are ride or dies for the channel, that I really, really loved this deck for a very long time and worked with it a lot. And then, of course, situations, things changed in my life personally. And this is one of those things that why I love this idea for a series is that there will be times in your journey with tarot where you do kind of take a step back from working with certain decks. Sometimes that stretch of time where you don't work with the deck can be really long. I won't lie to you about that. And in this case with Ludy Lescot, I at least went 2 or 3 years where pretty much for the most part, I will be very honest with you all, I really didn't touch her. As you guys know, I have a lifelong love affair with tarot vampires and decks like the Mary L Tarot, I was really trying to connect with Dreams of Gaia tarot for a while. And so this deck just ended up being one of those decks that I just didn't pick her up for a while. And at one point I had gifted my original copy. So around the time I moved back to New Hampshire from Maine, so it's weird to say this now, guys, but this is like true confessional tarot deck hour. Oh my God, it was in 2019, so it's been like 3 years now. It's crazy. So about 3 years ago when I moved from Maine back to New Hampshire, which really, that was a very big move in my life, and was really difficult for me to leave Portland, but it was the best choice for my son for me to come back to New Hampshire. There was a lot of strife revolved around, you know, leaving the coastline of Maine, which, as some of you know, I really feel very connected to that energy. So darker decks, definitely, as much as I've always loved them, and 2019 especially was very much a time where I needed to feel that connection. I needed to go into that shadow work. I needed to have those kind of decks that were gritty and dark and not just about love and light. And so I did repurchase the Ludy Lescot Tarot around that time. And I will say that I'm very glad that I did. So from about 2019 forward, I work with her seasonally. She's pretty much a September to December deck for me. And in readings, she spares no mercy. I will be very, very upfront about that. If you are looking for a sweet and soft and loving, gentle deck, the Ludy Lescot Tarot is not going to be your friend. She's super, super honest to a fault, and she's very well aligned for shadow work if you're okay with the imagery. The imagery, as you can see, if you've been looking, it can be visceral. It's pretty upfront and in your face. It's not necessarily very pretty, but it's very clearly telling a story. And if you're like me and you have an aversion to clowns, there are some images in this deck that really, really are not my favorite. But that being said, if you're someone who likes darker decks, you're going to love this deck. If you're someone who likes horror movies, if you're someone who likes vampire myths and fairy tales, then you're going to love this deck. And her voice has pretty much, I would say, stayed very true for me over the years. Since I first started working with her through to this year today, I actually just pulled her out this morning to work with, and I was like, oh my God, she needs to be the kickoff for this series. So once again, thank you to my viewer who requested this series. But she very much is gonna, she's a straight shooter. She's gonna tell you the truth. She's gonna uncover, like, look at this image for the Chariot. Fucking love it, man. I love it. Like, there are things that you notice in the images when you pay attention, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get another level here. I get something that maybe I wasn't wanting to see that in my life, or see how I'm going along with something or playing along with a certain story. And you can really see that, you know, those patterns that we're all, for those of us who are following a spiritual path, we tend to look at and examine within ourselves that we repeat. This is a really good deck for, if you can have the time and the space to sit with her and what comes through in the cards, then you can really get a lot out of this deck. And as I said, it really does give, like, for me anyhow, the way that I have always visualized Anne Rice's vampires in her older books in the night, so, you know, that came out in the 90s, and it has that feel. You really get that feel. It is a very New Orleans feeling deck, and like, look at this, guys. You know that imagery just speaks to my goth heart. But the imagery is definitely something that's gonna, if you like it, it's going to be something that really lends itself well to journaling and shadow work. So if you are doing some of the videos, if you're working with some of the videos that I recorded recently on shadow work, or really connecting with your decks, this is one that will lend itself well to that type of work. Let me just talk about some brass tacks things for a moment. It's low Scarabeo, so they're super slippery cards. I love these backings, by the way. Do you guys see that? Isn't that gorgeous? They're super slippery, and the deck itself warps, like as you can see. I don't know if you can see that, but mine's, see, I can't even let go of it to show you. Mine's like pretty warped from shuffling. And here's the image that like, ugh, it's like the Fool and the Six of Cups. I'm like, ooh, I have such an aversion to clowns. It doesn't wear very well. I won't lie to you about that. It's like my Night Sun Tarot, which will also be in this video series. But my Night Sun Tarot, I'm really struggling with how she is wearing. She's not, over the years, the cardstock is just not, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, I love some Scarabeo decks, but I just wish that their cardstock and that their guidebooks would bring a little bit more to the table for those of us who work with cards all the time. So, I digress. Just brass tacks. I would be very gentle and careful with this deck. It's not one I would necessarily beat up on a lot. And when I travel with this deck, she has like her own bag, her own tarot bag, and I'm very careful about not letting her get too beat up, as opposed to say like my Darkwood Tarot. I don't know why, but like I can do anything to her. She stood up really well to wear and tear. But this is one that I would say I would offer if you're considering purchasing this, and me talking about, you know, the continued connection I've had with this deck over the years. If it's speaking to you and you feel called to purchase it, again, if it's still available for purchase, I hope it is. We're going to find out after I make this video. I would just say, just be aware that you may have to be gentler with her than with some other decks. I love this imagery, by the way, too. But so as far as her general personality, she has stood the test of time. Like I said, I did have a break there for a year or two. I had a couple years there where I did not connect with her. I didn't even have her in my collection for a period of time. But I did feel called to repurchase her, and I'm really glad I did. And I have no intention of gifting this deck or, you know, offering her as a gift to someone or sharing her with anyone. Like, this deck is very much, very, very much an integral part of my collection. Like I said, she is seasonal, typically September to December. Sometimes she'll roll into January, but she's really, really special. Here's the Judgment card, guys. Isn't that one awesome? I love that imagery. I've shown you guys a whole deck, so we're only a few cards away. So the Fool isn't a clown, but isn't it kind of creepy, guys? That one creeps me out. I love to be creeped out as a side point. So, it's not a bad thing. Love this image here with the Three of Cups. And then finishing with one of my very, very important cards, one of my meters in which I test whether a deck is going to be long-term for me or not, and that's the Three of Swords. And I actually really like this imagery. Like, again, it's not a pretty deck. She's not about being beautiful. Like, this is not the golden Art Nouveau tarot deck. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's gritty, she's dirty. Some bad things happen, some good things happen, and there's blood and guts and lust and sex and the devil and like you vampires, like you just get that feel from her. She's really beautifully herself. So the Ludy Lescot Tarot, I still highly recommend her if you like dark decks. If you don't like dark, gritty decks, then she's not the deck for you. She's not going to be the deck for you. But if you do like darker themed decks, which you might because you found my channel, then I think that you'll enjoy working with her. So I kind of want to just play around a little bit here, and I just want to draw one card for us from her, so we can just kind of feel her general energy. Like I said, she's a dark, gritty priestess who works her magic in the swamp. Let's see what she wants to share with us. Oh my God. Okay. It's the Justice card reversed. So there's a real sense with this. So you guys can see, remember I did a video recently where I said I don't really read reversals. I have to turn her around so I can look at her. That's hysterical to me that she's the only card that was reversed in this deck. There's a sense of rebalance that we might be experiencing at this time that the Ludy Lescot Tarot is encouraging us to look at. And if we're feeling like in some way something isn't fair for us at this time, or that our truth isn't being seen or honored as equally important perhaps as someone else's. The Justice card is reminding us, that we can connect with the goddess Mot and allow our understanding of our own truth to be what sees us through even the darkest of times. So there's almost a sense of recalibration, I feel like, with her, and where she has shown up reversed, and I don't normally read reversals, I do think there's something about working with the Justice card in regards to allowing our knowledge of ourselves to be enough for us. So I hope you've enjoyed this first video in my Decks Revisited series. The Ludy Lescot Tarot has beautifully stood the test of time. I still love reading with her to this day, and I typically work with her in the fall and early winter, and I connect with her around ritual working and shadow work readings and shadow work in general for myself as well as for clients. So I am sending you all much love and many blessings. I will see you in the next video. Bye.